Hello everybody and welcome to another painting video. I am the Esper Brush and I'm going to show you how to paint green Fel Flames so that way you can paint your miniatures just like your edgy World of Warcraft OC that you just can't seem to let go of. It's time. Now, painting this recipe would work for red flames as well. You just switch out that green for red tones and it would work out pretty well. Now, if you want to paint something different like purple fire, then you don't want to use this recipe because it utilizes yellow, which we don't want in that purple color. But regardless, I'm going to be showing you how to paint these green flames that you see here on Emperor Carver from Warmachine. So let's grab a brush and get to painting. Alright, so we started off with a white color as our primer, although I technically brushed that on. We're going to get in there with two thin coats ethereal green for our base color, and you're going to want to cover the entire white with it just like this. You're going to want to make sure that you have a nice strong coat. Don't paint too thickly because you don't want to build up physical texture on your miniature. Now you are going to be wanting to paint multiple layers of this ethereal green so that way you have a strong coat. You're going to want it to look something like this. Once that layer is dried, we're going to be moving into a highlight, and remember we are painting fire, so your highlights are not going to be on the outside of the model, they're going to be on the inside of that flame. To do this, we're going to be combining two thin coats ethereal green with two thin coats skulker yellow. We're going to be doing about a 50-50 mix. You want to make sure that your paint is thin and you're going to be painting it in the recesses. And you can actually paint it pretty broadly throughout the flame because later on we're going to be painting our darker colors and blending it all in. You also don't have to be too worried about the cleanliness, in this case for me with this sword, because we are going to be doing the tiniest bit of OSL as we clean up and blend the flame into the sword. Also, if you want a hint, the back of the miniature doesn't have to be as neat or nice looking as the front of the miniature, because the front of the miniature is that focus. Next, we're going to be moving into our next highlight, and it's going to be almost purely skulker yellow. However, you'll want to add a little bit of a dash of ethereal green in there to keep that sort of green tint. With this color, we're not going to be painting as much of the flame. However, you can still be rather generous. Just be thin, be careful, and get it in those recesses. You can already see the effect coming together. The contrast is doing a lot of heavy lifting. We're going to be moving forward to add more contrast to make it really pop. We're going to be moving into a highlight of pure skulker yellow. Now we don't want a whole lot of that on our brush and we don't want to make sure it's thin, so I like to test that on my thumb. Once we're good to go, we're going to start applying it pretty conservatively to this flame because we don't want our flame to become yellow, we want it to remain green, and if we paint a pure yellow, then that can alter it a lot. Yellow is really the secret to this recipe and making it look like a cool fire. Yellow is the source of our heat, it's the source of our light, so you want to get in there in those deeper crevices and apply that, but not over a lot of our green flame. You're going to want to paint thinly, and you don't want it to be so thin that it's a glaze. That'll just create a wet mess. But if you paint thinly, it'll blend much better with those previous colors. And I always thin with water unless I specifically mention a contrast medium or anything like that. We're going to be moving on to a highlight of Two Thin Coats Yellow Flame, and this is, unlike what the swatch shows in the top left-hand corner, a pretty bright yellow. So you're going to want to apply it pretty sparingly, and I know what you're thinking, how many more highlights are there going to be? And the answer to that is we're going to have 2 more highlights, so it's going to get even brighter. I'm also going to be painting in the circles in the blade. Now previously I'd painted these white with our base, as well as some ethereal green. Now these holes are our brightest point in the flame, so it's okay that I cover the entire area with that yellow. For our second to last highlight, we're going to be mixing AK 3rd Gen's Ice Yellow with our Yellow Flame, and we're going to be adding it only sparingly to the absolute crevices. We're going to be saving that final highlight that I had mentioned for a little later down the road. It's time to move on to our darker colors, and to get there we're going to start reapplying our ethereal green. Make sure it's thin so that it can blend in with that yellow, but we're just going to start to kind of rebuild that green color and make sure that the flame has not gotten too yellow. Now we're going to be introducing our darker color in Two Thin Coats Wyvern Green. You're going to want to make sure that this layer is thin so it doesn't apply too heavily. We're going to be applying that to the edge of the flames, sort of like an edge highlight, except it's a shadow. Remember, flames, the brightest color goes in the inside rather than the outside, like traditional painting. We're going to be painting that on the edges as well as the end of the flame. As the flame goes out, it becomes smoke, so that's what our darker color is going to emulate. Then we're going to apply it once again, but this time we are going to have it a bit heavier, but we're going to counteract that by taking a second brush once we've applied it to start feathering it out towards the greener ethereal green. To do this, your second brush should have a slight bit of moisture to it, and you should be soft with your touches. We're going to apply our final shadow by mixing Two Thin Coats Wyvern Green with Two Thin Coats Doom Death Black, and it's going to be a very tiny amount of that Doom Death Black. This is going to be applied only at the very ends of the edges and the tips of that flame. It's going to emulate the very blackest bit of smoke coming off of our flame. Then I'm going to start on that tiny little bit of OSL that I had mentioned earlier. To do that, I'm going to be mixing Wyvern Green with Ethereal Green. I'm going to be applying it to the metal of my sword, just around these holes. The brightness of the holes will add contrast to the darkness of this color, and it'll give it a faint kind of glow. Now, I'm not very good at OSL. I don't really understand it very well, so I don't like to paint it. So take this portion with a bit of a grain of salt. After I applied those dark colors, I moved back in with my metal colors dark gray, and I blended it in with the dark green to clean it all up. This made it feel a little bit more natural looking. It's time to apply that last highlight, and for that we're going to be using pure AK 3rd Gen Ice Yellow. Now, this is a very bright color, so we want to make sure it's very, very thin. We're only going to apply it to the deepest recesses of the miniature. This very bright color is going to help with that OSL effect because it's so bright it'll contrast very well and create that slight glow. Here he is, Emperor Carver from Warmachine, and while he is not fully painted up, his blade and that green Fel flame certainly is. You can see how much the contrast in the colors really makes this effect pop. Remember, you can use this recipe for red flames. You can just replace the green colors with red colors. As you mix those red colors with yellow, it'll become orange. It'll all make sense. Trust me, give it a try. I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Follow me on my socials. I've got the links down below. I'm big on BlueSky. I've got the Instagram. I've got Twitter. I'm not calling it X. Want to see how I painted something on those socials? Leave a comment. I'll create a YouTube short or maybe even a full YouTube video if I find it interesting enough to explore. So once again, thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next video.